Hello, everybody. I hope that if you're seeing this or hearing this in time, you'll check out my live Here We Are remote podcast that you get to participate in. You get to comment along, ask questions, everything else. Another crowdcast event. I did 4 of them in April and May. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of those, a bicycle day, or when I screened my documentary, or my 40th birthday show, or another Head Talks show that we did. They were so much fun. Hit the pause button on it for the summer because I didn't think summertime was the right time to put that effort into launching something more regular. And I would love to take a whack at getting it to be a somewhat regular thing that I do, a virtual Here We Are event or something like it. So this one is, I'm calling the Media Dilemma. It's going to be kind of like the Social Dilemma on Netflix, but we're going to be breaking down the science of the pros and cons of all of our modern media, online dating, Netflix, social media, emailing. What are the pros and the cons? Should your kids have a tablet? At what age? How much is too much? What different, actively participating in something like a video game versus passively watching or listening to something, or something educational like this show versus something just to kind of escape. What are the pros and cons of all those things? They all have pros and cons. We're hoping to have a balanced conversation. I have Heather Krikorian, who was on episode 200 of the Here We Are podcast. If you want to go back and listen to that, or perhaps you remember her we talked a lot about tablets and kids use of media and the internet generally. She's kind of an anti-hysteria, tends to see more of the upside of these things, and she's joining us is Catalina Tama, a colleague of hers, and my comedian friend Ken Reed, who is the host of the podcast TV Guidance Counselor. So we're going to have a really fun, cool discussion all about that. Go to my website to learn more. And if you guys, this one's free. It's part of the Wisconsin Science Fest. There's this science and kind of technology company that promotes science communication called 𝕊𝕦𝕤 that is taking part and gave me a budget. So you guys, this is the first free event that I'm doing. So I hope you'll take a chance and check it out. I guess my 40th birthday was free. But anyway, I hope that you'll take a chance and check it out, because I would love to, if I can figure out a way to cover my expenses and even, who knows, dare I say, turn a profit on something. I would absolutely love to do these regularly, and not just because it's COVID or whatever, and I'm not live touring right now, but because I think this is a platform that I would love to use, if not this, something like it, regularly, even once I'm live touring again. So keep that in mind. If you don't have any plans, it's at 8:30 Central Time, but you can check it out from anywhere. And go to shanemauss.com or the herewearepodcast.com. I hope you really enjoy this wonderful episode. This was a fun one. You'll see.
Are we?
Yes.
Where are we?
Here.
Why are we here? Not entirely clear. We are misfits thrust into existence by random chance, with no hints at all as to how we're supposed to make sense of it all. It's immensely bizarre. Here we are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Here We Are podcast. This is a exciting one because I have a favorite return guest, and also joined with a new guest. I have return guest Barrett Klein, who listeners know as the single most enthusiastic human being on planet Earth. We're going to be talking about insects again today. The most recent episode about murder hornets was a real popular one. I actually just yesterday, I got so I have yet to figure out how to get traction on YouTube with the podcast. Most of my downloads are still from audio versions because I didn't do YouTube until 6 months ago. But I just yesterday got a YouTube comment on your episode from 2 months ago or whatever. People, someone praising just how absolutely wonderful it was. So I'm excited to have you back, Barrett Klein.
It's hard not to be enthusiastic about murder hornets.
Yeah, right. It's not even fair.
And today, mosquitoes.
And I have I don't know. This is my first time meeting Lyric Bartholomay. I don't know if you're going to be the straight person in the conversation or if you're going to attempt to match Barrett's enthusiasm. Who knows how it's going to go? Yep. We're just meeting for our first time. The old friends, new friends. This is so exciting. Barrett's he's a biology professor that is entomologist and just is also a artist. What do you call the kind of art that is
an
like
artist?
Entomo artist. And Lyric, tell the listeners about yourself.
Oh, well, I'm a vector biologist. I was thinking about all the ways that I identify, and if leading with vector biologist is the most interesting thing, I'm not sure. I study bloodsuckers. How about that?
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah,
So like disease vectors specifically, right. when you say biological, so a vector biologist, that wouldn't be like a pollination kind of vector. We're talking like specifically in terms of kind of disease. And does that mean it impacts on humans or impacts on all mammals?
Mammals. So animals and human animals, non-human animals and human animals. I'm actually in a veterinary school, so I'm a professor in the vet school at the UW Madison.
That's
and the connection is that not that veterinarians take care of mosquitoes when they're sick, although I probably could do that. but that mosquitoes transmit pathogens that impact things like horses, right?
I see. And I imagine like ticks and stuff. What's the tick situation with your dogs? You go hiking for a dog. We're hiking with a dog. We're in Wisconsin. Yep. There's ticks all over the place. Yeah. I had a tick freak out early summer. I emailed Barrett about my go-to insect guy. What's the scoop if people have dogs? They're living in the Midwest. There's these darn deer ticks everywhere. Yeah, what do you got to do? What's the best practices?
Best practice is to give your dogs either those oral or topical treatments that kill ticks if the tick's feeding on them.
All right.
Because it's so hard with a dog to find a tick. We tell people to do tick checks, but like do a tick check on an Akita. It's just impractical.
Is there anything for humans that?
No, there should be, right? I wish I could put that stuff on my neck.
And how does it? I've never quite got how that works. Like you can just, it's you put a little bit in your skin and then it just moves through your body. How does that?
It just absorbs. Isn't that wild?
It is. I mean, am I dumb for not getting how that works? Like,
no, I don't get how it works. I'm just grateful.
And actually, why doesn't that translate to humans?
Isn't that
if it's safe enough for your dog, why wouldn't it be safe enough? I mean, one of the beautiful things about Lyric being in a vet school is that we think about vector biology in a comparative light. So comparative biology is really important, as we've seen in recent disease spreads where we wonder, where did Ebola come from? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
And we can look to close relatives of humans or more distant relatives as possible vectors of.
Oh man, I have 3 questions that popped into my head all at once, and I don't know where to start. Let me close one loop. Why in the world, now I'm kind of stuck on this. Why are we spraying ourselves with off and all of these other things? And instead of just squirting a little, maybe it's because dogs don't bathe as often as humans do. Is that
right,
part of?
Or it could be that it's more toxic to a person than it would be to a dog. I don't know the chemistry well enough.
Okay,
But, maybe because of your podcast, somebody will take on making this a human label.
That's right.
I have a nasty habit of being like, hey, you're a scientist. Know every single thing.
Right.
Okay. Something I've been thinking about with COVID lately, and just the ways in which humans are impacted in disease is that you hear a lot of people talking about COVID as just like, diseases happen. This is a natural thing. This is just something we have to live with or whatever. But to me, it sounds a little bit like the kind of climate denial of like, these are natural fluctuations because to me the current state of the human condition is vastly different than the environment that we evolved in. Whereas if you were to say if there was a disease going around lions or something, it might take out a pack, or they might have, I don't know how lions distance or whatever their defense mechanisms for diseases are, but it wouldn't get all of the lions unless you put them in, say, the Tiger King or whatever, and you stick them all in and they're around their feces or waste, and more diseases might pass. But then to make matters worse, not only are you grouping all of these lions together in this unnaturally packed together environment, but then you're also feeding them meat from other things that are packed together in this like reservoir for disease of different livestock being around way more of their feces and everything else than they would normally, and it just seems like this. It seems like diseases might be more impactful in our modern life than they would normally. I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that, and if insects in any way play a kind of role in our modern environment of just more humans for insects to be vectors for, or more humans for insects to be vectors for.
Can I start with an anecdote?
Yeah.
So I used to live in.
What if I said no?
All right, I'm out.
We forgot to do the ground rules. No hand. Listen, I thought you were a scientist. What's this anecdotal evidence?
We build from anecdotes. So I lived in a condemned trailer in Mark Twain National Forest of Missouri in the Ozarks for a couple of years, decades ago. And I moved from this trailer in the woods to the Bronx, New York. Packed up the car, drove to the Bronx. So in this condemned trailer in the woods versus being packed together like sardines in a highly urban environment, I often ask my students, all right, where was I more likely to get the flu or the common cold? And it leads to discussion about the trade-offs of being social. So there are big advantages of being social. Whether you're human or non-human animal, there can be big advantages, but it comes with big disadvantages as well. And one of those is disease spread.
Yeah. I mean, there's isn't there also doesn't social life have implications on immune systems? Aren't there? I don't know that you would know about this, but I think there's been some studies on even people like falling in love, and their different their immune responses adjusting, because if in our past environment humans were kind of like away from their tribe more, there's different regulatory mechanisms that would need to take place because they'd be more or less vulnerable to different aspects of things than if they were within the tribe. And so I don't know. I wonder if on an individual level there's immune system changes within a urban versus city environment. But none of that has much to say with much to do with insects.
No, that's a really interesting idea, because you can look at all kinds of social or truly social organisms. Like, some think that leafcutter ants that can live in colonies numbering millions and have to take out detritus, say dead bodies or microbially infected fungal bits, because they grow fungus gardens. That's what they feed on. They're farmers and have been for 60 million years. So they have these dump chambers. For one species, it's below ground. For another species, it's above ground. When it's above ground, it's really exciting because you can see them travel along and dump in their dumps, their above ground dumps, all the garbage. Well, that's going to be pathogen ridden. And some organisms love that, thrive on it. Myrmecophiles, ant lovers, will live in or feed on that dump chamber. But for the ants themselves, the few individuals that go out are thought to kind of stay out on the periphery and not enter the deep realms, the galleries where the queen might reside, for example.
Amazing. So Lyric, this is why
That's right.
This is why take notes from Barrett as a guest. What he does is he takes my my wild straying off topics
and makes a career out of it.
Absolutely.
Somehow spins something interesting to say, despite my efforts to sabotage the conversation.
I'm going to make it so you don't sound learned.
There are an infinite number of great ideas generated by you and others that scientists should listen to.
So before we get into, we're going to be talking a lot about altering the DNA of mosquitoes. This is why we first put this together. This is one of the reasons why I'm excited to talk with you today, Lyric, as well. But you know, it's a quickly changing world that we're living in 2020, and we need to adapt and make adjustments on the fly. And there's this unavoidable topic that if I recorded this on this date, October 9th, 2 days after the vice presidential debate, and I didn't ask you guys a little something about flies, people would be very upset with me. So here we are. It may not flies may not be and why they land on certain human hair and not others may not necessarily be your area of study. But let's talk
my
about
focus.
it.
Definitely my focus.
At least for the last 2 days.
Yeah, my master's dealt with flies landing on wigs and natural hair products.
Yeah, you gotta have I mean, it's hard to get a good control group of because everyone has so many different kinds of hair. I mean, you can have people with no product, sure, but then there's people with different balding patterns.
Yeah, the bald contingent. That's really important.
It's your control.
That's right. And then, as an additional control, the shaved head.
Yep.
This is a somewhat serious question. Are there gender differences in in terms of human gender differences in what certain insects might be attracted to, like in say mosquitoes or anything? Do men or females tend to get bit or landed on more often? Is that a thing that anyone knows?
Well, so there used to be reports on things like pregnant women being more attractive to mosquitoes, with the idea that maybe because they're hotter because they're bearing a child, that perhaps just body heat, or maybe being sweaty and nervous because you're about to have a baby, makes you more attractive to a mosquito. But I don't think it really has played out as such. I think it's super individual. It seems like, one person, me pregnant or not, I'm not very attractive to mosquitoes. And so you could say I'm repellent. But it's probably related to things like the bacteria on my skin and the way, lactic acid is released from my body, or CO2, that makes me just not that exciting to a mosquito. Whereas maybe you're delicious, Shane. I don't know.
I mean, what is so exciting about a huge, just a mound of gray gelled hair for a fly to, it certainly doesn't look very nutrient rich. Is there what is it that would drive a fly to want to land on? And then do you think it was the gel that maybe got stuck on? It's like there's some sort of a fly trap situation that once it landed, it had a bit of an issue freeing itself?
Well, can I start by saying, when there's an utter lack of substance during a debate at the highest level of government, it's real. I find it heartwarming. It's fortunate that we can turn to entomology as an educational diversion. So the world tweets and twitters and twits about a fly landing on a debater's head. In the most high stakes year, yes, right. Let's pay attention to the fly. And now, of course, as an entomologist, I am going to be intrigued, and I'll want to identify that fly, right?
Yeah.
And so you can think about.
I was taking pictures.
There you go. So, process of elimination. You think, all right. Family 𝕊𝕐𝕐, over 5,500 species, all parasitoids, parasites that kill their hosts.
No, I think it's the California.
California, blowflies, bottleflies, attracted to garbage.
Hold up.
Garbage and carcasses, dead stuff. That seems like a given, right? Sarcophagidae, flesh flies, also attracted to garbage and dead stuff.
Or
Muscidae.
Are you guys on a forum, or are there are there texts?
This is truly how our brains work.
Flying around between you guys when you see something like this?
And then a debate would rage. So, for example, Lyric thinks it's family California, the blowflies
or
/bottleflies.
Muscidae, right?
That's my guess, the housefly.
Yeah, I think it's a housefly.
Musca domestica. So it's.
But I did want opportunity for Barrett to say something about carrion.
Yes.
And putrescence.
Yes. Smelling of the putrescence.
The housefly is called the domestica?
Yeah. So
Musca domestica, yes.
That's wonderful. That's the first well-named Latin, scientific
some
sounding
brilliant
thing
ones
that
out there. There's some beauties.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You got. I'm saying you could say it to the average Joe, and they'd be like, "That makes sense."
Right.
There are easy ones like gorilla and iguana. You can run with those.
Oh, those
My favorite is 𝕊𝕐𝕐𝕚.
Wait, those are actually things, not types of insects. We're talking about gorillas.
Oh, yeah.
And iguana.
No.
Oh, okay,
but if you want insects, a colleague of mine is writing a book where he's going to look at the etymology of entomology, study of the roots of words associated with the study of insects, with some zinger names through history.
Do you, if you guys, is there a way to get down to the bottom of the debate of what exact species of fly that it was, just from video alone, just from the forensic account of slowing down? What do you just zooming in, or do you need to see it move, or what are you looking for?
We can get close. Go ahead, Barrett.
Oh, I was just going to say, Shane, we need to wheel over a dissecting microscope to your house, put a fly under that scope, and it has to be something that is dead, pinned, so that you can look at it very carefully and count seedy hair-like structures on the fly's sides to really figure out what family it belongs to.
So we may never know.
Well, you know what I have to say, though, one of the cool things we're doing in my lab right now is, I run a center on vector-borne disease with a colleague here in entomology, and we have a student working with us who's using artificial intelligence and neural networks to use sort of whatever the computer decides is a hallmark structure to identify ticks.
Oh.
So that you could have a digital image of a tick and get a species identification entirely virtually or digitally.
Wow.
Yes.
So you could find a tick on you, take a picture, and an app could tell you.
Yep.
That's amazing.
We need
That's
the
a
same
game
thing,
changer.
right, for Mike Pence's fly.
And I should add that science is all about probabilities, and arguably you can never prove anything in science, so you try to disprove or falsify alternative hypotheses so you can zero in. And this idea of building up the probabilities toward identifying is brilliant.
I mean, if say someone got it, say like if I would have been in that crowd, I would have been like, I gotta get that. That's the home run baseball of like Cubs winning the World Series after decades. Like that is a very valuable fly
specimen. I mean, can you imagine if we had it on a pin, Barrett? Wouldn't it be so great? And so, like with insects, when you collect a specimen, you stick them on a pointy pin, right? A thin pin. Everybody's seen that. And then
they
you
may
put
or may not
labels
be dead.
Well, they usually die in the process, sort of.
Yeah.
You freeze them.
And sometimes they're still fine.
Oh yeah, look, Barrett's got who pressed it or something there. But so you put them on a pin and then you put a label on there. You know, you like write in little tiny letters where you collected it.
VP debate 2020.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a politically charged insect for sure.
Yes.
And it wouldn't be the first. It wouldn't be the first to name some politically charged insects of the past. There is a beetle whose species epithet is 𝕊𝕙𝕒. And apparently, this beetle has been collected to near extinction. What? And there was even an art exhibit. I was invited. I couldn't do it at the time, but there was an art exhibit reaching out to scientific illustrators and entomo artists to illustrate without looking at what this Hitler named beetle looked like, to try to imagine that. And it became this really amazing exhibit of somewhat abstract to highly realistic, anatomically correct beetles named after this despicable character. And then more recently, a colleague of mine named 3 slime mold beetles after Cheney, Bush, and Rumsfeld.
Well, I was going to ask this before you even brought this up. If we actually knew what this fly was, is it you get rid of whatever the Latin name was? It's the
Shane, I've got to stop you there.
We're done. We keep it. We just don't use it.
It's all about precedence. All about precedence in science.
So there's going to be more debates.
Well, commonly,
more
it would be the Pence fly, though. The what is it again?
Common name, sure.
The something domestica. You think that it
Musca.
was? It would be the Pence fly.
Yeah.
At least while it's fashionable until
Yes.
the next debate.
Yes, I
And
like
I
it.
can tell you that while it's a little bit pricey, I did find that there's a Pence wig with attached fly as a Halloween costume.
Oh, I'm gonna be that. I'm gonna do that.
A little bit.
For those
pricey.
really reaching for the moment to shine.
What do you mean it's a little bit pricey?
Well, I think it was something like $59 for the wig with a fake fly attached.
That's you say that's expensive if you have months to crank this thing out. This is October 9th. You the retooling that you have to do in that factory to all of the sudden crank out that's shut it all down. Whatever political costumes we already were gonna do this year, we get rid of them. The Bernie costumes are. We got to shut down that line. We're going all in on the Pence hair fly. That's a lot of. I think that you're
I guess I'm thinking
underestimating.
From the
logistical
individual
concerns.
costume maker perspective. I can go to my basement, grab one of my many wigs, throw it on my head, and then grab a real fly and glue it on.
Yeah, that's a solid point.
But you're right. If you're thinking from a business model perspective, Shane, you're right.
I mean, Barrett. Not everyone is making their own like fly heads and stuff that's in your background right now.
That'll start soon. That will start soon. We're setting trends here, Shane.
So
I know what the segue is. I'm
kind of not done with this topic.
Oh, sorry. Okay, please continue.
But I mean, I don't care. I don't consider myself like I'm not I don't consider myself to be the captain of this ship. This is just a conversation. We can steer it in any way that we desire. I'm a little stuck on the Hitler beetle right now before my mind can move on. That's a big fun fact to just drop on somebody. Why was it named that? And what
Did it have a particular mustache?
No, it wasn't the anatomy at all. It was the time of discovery.
Oh.
And Hitler had his adherents and one proponent for the Nazi regime named that beetle.
See, I would name a flea after him because the fleas really have this sort of mustache.
That's right. Or wait, how about an assassin fly? They're called mustached flies.
Yes.
Ooh.
It's usually a white fringe of seedy or hair-like structures. Yeah, that would work.
I'm curious about before we move on to mosquitoes. I am curious about flies as something that people have to deal with all the time. A fly flying on their food or whatever on them. To me, it doesn't seem like a big deal.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you that it kind of is a big deal. And
this is what I wanted to know.
Mosquito domestica itself, so that particular species of fly, we've done work to capture those flies and tickle their little tarsi toes to see what's attached, what's on there. And there's all kinds of things. There's tapeworm eggs. There's Toxoplasma gondii.
Wow.
Right? The parasite that we don't want pregnant women to come in contact with. There's all kinds of bacteria. And the reason is because those flies, and you can decide whether this is political commentary or not, those flies are attracted to feces and will go and walk around on animal poo.
Yeah.
And get things stuck on their feet, the structure that's analogous to our feet, and then maybe come inside and walk around on your Cheerios.
Lyric, I have a question
Oh my
for
gosh,
you.
we should just stop the video right now and look at Shane's face.
That-
Yeah.
Well,
Priceless. If you're listening to
Freeze
this
frame.
podcast, you really must go to YouTube and
I
watch
mean,
it.
I just love. Probably my favorite thing about this podcast is when I learn like a new horrifying possibility about reality. It's one
Which
of
is
my
the great thing about mosquitoes and flies.
yeah. It's I don't know why, but I just love when people scare the crap out of me. It you know what it is? It just feels real to me. We're all in Wisconsin. There's a lot of like cheerleading that goes on within the human condition, and I've not always like bought into it, and it's always like I'm like I don't know about that. And when I hear about like flies landing on your salad and giving you tapeworm eggs, I'm like, yep, that sounds right. Something about that just feels something about that resonates.
Now that's something I can embrace.
It'll make you more serious about your fly swatter for sure.
I listen to like guided meditations and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's gonna work for me. I hear tapeworm eggs on my salad. I'm like, yeah, probably.
Yep.
So if you listen to mindfulness meditation and they just in dulcet tones, melodically talked about dung landing flies passing along pathogens.
I think all of the horrors and just like a really wonderful voice, like
soothing voice.
Not like the obvious ones either. You know, I don't. You know, we all know we're probably gonna blow up the world at some point, and like climate change. I like those hidden gems.
The
What's
hidden
on the
atrocities.
bottom of fly feet? That's definitely going to kill you. That's what I want, like a real soothing voice. I actually was planning on doing a guided ruminations of just walking people through all of the horrible things that distract me on a daily basis.
I love it.
I love it too.
Compilation.
Genius.
Yeah, compilation of hidden atrocities.
And then you can come take my parasitology class in the spring. I'll give you the Zoom link.
Yes, I've been sitting in on a bunch of classes. I would love to. I'm
so
currently
fun.
on one that's all about all of the. Sitting in on one of Robert Sapolsky's class.
Fantastic.
All about every horrible thing that can go wrong in the aging brain. And I just like, I barely can understand what they're talking about half the time. And I'm just like basking in the darkness of like the horrifying reality of just like what an impossible task it is to try to make headway on Alzheimer's or something like that. It's like, it's not. I wish it weren't the case. I wish science moved faster and we lived on more science-based policy and created a better world for ourselves faster. But there's something so rich about that darkness that I can't get enough of it. I don't know what it is.
Shane, could you send me the link to Sapolsky's class?
Sure.
And Lyric, can I take your parasitology class?
Yes, absolutely. I would
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So I've got a follow-up question for you, Lyric, about the hidden atrocity of the tarsi of flies.
Please.
So I once read, and this may be outdated, so maybe it's apocryphal, but I once read in a book on cockroaches that no disease has been causally linked to, say, the American cockroach, Paraplaneta americana, spreading to humans. Now, it may have happened, but it hasn't been documented. Is that true, and is the same true for Musca domestica?
So I think that there are some data, and they're not, it's not direct sort of causation, but I think there were some pretty good correlative data on heavily cockroach-infested homes in subsidized housing. So high density people living in close proximity to one another. Getting back to Shane's question about, humans living in close proximity and the things that can go wrong. So in those housing developments that had high cockroach density and a lot of people, there was a lot more, there was a lot higher incidence of hepatitis, I think was the outcome that they were looking at there.
Okay.
And so it's not to say that there was a study done that showed a particular roach, like Rosie, took that from a toilet or whatever and brought it over to the next apartment.
Wow.
But all the complementary, say there could have been lice, rodents, fleas, and other
bugs.
vectors potentially as well.
Ooh. Oh, man. I have so many questions, and it's going to get us into mosquitoes.
Bloodsuckers.
Eventually.
I'm telling you.
I mean, we're right in the ballpark. We're talking about disease vectors. I mean, this is not a difficult transition. But before that, what do we? People's fear of spiders. If we knock out, I'll say Americans' fear of spiders in particular, because it's my understanding. Are there even really poisonous spiders in the U.S. or that?
Yeah, there are a few.
There are a few, right? But like, at least if we isolate the areas where it's like you don't have a chance of dying from a spider in this area, that's not a thing. There's always going to be a little chance.
I mean, if you're looking at between 35 to 40,000 described species of spiders on the planet, and a handful or a couple of handful of species are actually truly threatening to humans, case by case, then a blanket or an umbrella of arachnophobia is truly a phobia. Yeah,
and wouldn't it be the case that more spiders would mean less flies, which could mean less spread of disease?
I love spiders in my house. Not only are spiders inherently amazing, beautiful organisms that create intricate webs and have fascinating behaviors, but yeah, if you don't want certain insects in your home, then they're really efficient predators.
So pro spiders. We're all pro spiders here. What about?
I can imagine Barrett doing one of those mindfulness recordings in Dulce's
I think I should do that.
About
Shane, you'll be my test market. Okay?
You have too much inflection, too much yeah, that's what I want.
Chant it out.
That's what
Vectors of disease.
8 legs. Many eyes.
Segmented jointed legs.
That nice. I love that tone is so soothing. Just that nice. Everything sounds like it's underwater. Anyone can make this tone without having to worry about having a good singing voice or whatever. It's just it feels like coming home. Okay, so let's talk about. I have so many more like Pence jokes and stuff I could try to throw out there, but whatever. It honestly, I think we did a decent job with Pence. I think of the amount of it will be fun to see like similar things happen in the future and people be like, oh, that person just got penced. They
Yes.
got penced on national TV, and let's talk about mosquitoes, because I first reached out to you guys. It's just wonderful timing that we already had this lined up, and the fun fly thing happened. It seemed like it's been a great year for insect news generally. I don't remember insects permeating the zeitgeist of the pop culture or whatever, as much as they have in 2020. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Maybe
but
you're paying more attention because you're Barrett's friend.
that
I'm
could
telling you,
be.
entomology is infectious. Like, one person shows some enthusiasm about it, and you're just sucked right in.
I mean, and Barrett was the fourth or fifth entomologist I've had on. I'm interested in insects generally. Why wouldn't you be? They're aliens that fly around us all of the time. It's a window into looking at ourselves as aliens. There's looking through the fly eyes back at ourselves is a fun thought experience. It's just, insects are endlessly wonderful. What are you showing there?
I think we should start with
Describe
Robert Hooke's Micrographia, 1665.
For people that can't see this.
Yeah, so Micrographia by Robert Hooke. And Robert Hooke was one of the first microscopists inventing a compound microscope. And he looked at all manner of minutiae. And look at this. Among the many insects he features, the larval mosquito.
Ooh.
Right? So we've been thinking about mosquitoes and dealing with mosquitoes for more than these several hundred years, for millennia. And, ready for this? In 50 animals that changed the course of history, who is the first of the 50? You got it. Anopheles gambia. It's basically the Anopheles malarial vectoring mosquito, changing the course of history. And then one of many other books, Our Natural History of Our Most Persistent and Deadly Foe, Mosquito. So we've been thinking about mosquitoes a long time. So this, I advise, Shane, should be episode 1 of 37 on mosquitoes alone.
Go on and on. Right, I got them too, and I didn't even plan this, but I have all kinds of mosquito books.
American plague.
You guys are just surrounded by.
You've got them all.
Classics. Classics.
Here's a textbook, Biology of Disease Vectors.
Very good.
This is.
Who's on the cover?
And there's my dad.
Oh yes.
Wow.
Okay, sorry, Shane.
No, do not apologize. This is so much fun. I want listeners. This is another great YouTube episode. I want you to hit rewind to what happened on the last book that Barrett held up. It was The Red Mosquito
by
book.
Andy Spielman.
After he put it down, he had this look on his face like, yeah. Oh yeah. You know what I'm talking. Obviously. and
all about mosquitoes.
It's worth a reviewing.
I have other authoritative sources. Are you ready?
Another.
Oh my God.
Now this probably
I don't know if I'm ready. You didn't ask for my answer. You just asked if I was ready, and you just moved forward. I didn't tell you if I was ready or not.
I'm betting this one isn't gracing your shelf, Lyric. You ready? From the Chinese medicine series, Chinese Materia Medica, Insect Drugs, Dragon and Snake Drugs, Fish Drugs, by Bernard E. Reed.
What did they?
I don't actually have that one.
1985, and let's turn to page 148.
And
ready for this?
Ready.
Half the page is dedicated to mosquitoes, but my favorite line: turtles and tortoises are afraid of them. Hence, in cooking turtles, a few mosquitoes are added to soften the meat. Fireflies and bats eat them.
I think we're done.
Delicious.
That's it.
Delicious.
Who needs those additional 36 episodes on mosquitoes?
Wow.
Unless you want to learn about this graphic novel.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Another mosquito. An omnilingual Nosferatu pictomunition novel.
So I just want to tell you that I'm going to drop some knowledge on you, Shane, that may blow your mind. But you wanted to talk today about the fly.
I don't even care. I'm just
No, but
happy
you
to
should
be
know.
talking. I love how off the rails we're like finally. Usually my guests are annoyed with me for going so far off the rails.
I live for tangents.
I live for
Totally.
I'm just in bliss right now. So
Okay,
yeah.
here it is, but I'm going to drop some professorial knowledge on you. A mosquito also is a fly.
Oh.
Look.
Am I a bad person for not knowing that?
No,
Yes or no?
You're in the
Not
majority.
inherently bad.
You're in the majority, I would say.
So, Shane, notice this cover, and you've got an anatomically correct mosquito there because it has 6 legs and 2 wings. 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕪𝕒, Greek, 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕪𝕒. So the dipterans, the true flies, have 2 true wings. And
so if you were to zoom in on Mike's hair, you would see 2 wings.
2 wings.
Yeah, but is that mosquito an accurate represent?
Well, let me find a better picture of a mosquito.
Okay, here's one. This is better.
There we go.
Oh,
2
so
wings.
they do. All mosquitoes just have 2 wings?
All flies.
All
and mosquitoes
flies.
belong to one family, Culicidae, of flies.
Oh.
The hind wings, because insects...
You tried to break this down for me last time, and I was just dazzled. Sometimes I'm just dazzled by a bunch of sciencey words, and I don't take any of it in. I just
Haltears.
Well, just keep telling it.
Haltears.
I just enjoy. It's like music to me. I don't. I used to get caught up like when I wasn't like following along with a thing or misunderstanding something in a book or whatever, and now I just keep going and hope that it clicks into place, and I kind of enjoy it. And so the glaze over my eyes sometimes that's not
all.
indifference. That's appreciation.
It's not total apathy, Lyra.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our gosh,
Whoa.
there's a lot to unpack.
Shane, can I rewind 390 million years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So origin of insects, about 390, 400 million years ago or so. They're primitively wingless. So wings didn't just appear when insects appeared. And there's still 2 extant or presently living orders of insects that remain wingless. But when wings first evolved...
so we got spiders.
Oh, not insects.
So
no, spiders
separate
have
those
wings.
spiders. Remember, spiders are arachnids.
Oh, right.
And insects have 6 segmented jointed legs, by and large, as adults, right?
Right.
And largely 3 major body parts, right? Now, and external
Episode
mouth
37, I'm going to have this down.
and so flies, it took a while for the first fly to come about, right? And the synapomorphy, the shared derived character that's indicative of, that defines flies, the order Diptera, is that the hind pair of wings, because insects have 2 pairs of wings if they're winged at all, with some exceptions, secondary losses. One major secondary alteration, evolutionary change, was that the hind wings of true flies are haltears, these arguably gyroscopic balancing organs, the hind appendages, that you can convert genetically to wings again, if you want to, in a point mutation in fruit flies. So it tells us, wow, those are really wings.
And when you say true flies, do you think all the fake-ass flies take offense to that?
See those? Fake flies?
Fake
Damsel
flies.
Damsel flies are fake flies.
Mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies, flies my eye. So basically, if you're talking about true flies, entomology is laden with jargon, right? And nomenclatural little side roots, right? Well, one thing that we rely on is to look at a fly name and common names with the fly separated. So house fly. But something like
Pence
caddisfly.
fly.
Pence fly. But if we talk about something like a caddisfly, which isn't a fly at all, it belongs to the order Trichoptera, closer to a moth than anything else, you've got one word, caddisfly, together. So they are not true flies. But they fly. So we use fly in the name.
I think
And a lot of ordinal names or order names of insects. There are between 25 to 35 orders of insects, depending on what taxonomist you speak with. Many of those Latinate names end with ptera, or wing in Greek.
See, I kind of, as you name, of the ones that I know, I'm starting to think I like these fake ass flies more.
Lyric, your response to that?
in ways. I mean,
Oh wait, just keep
damsel
bringing us
fly.
on.
I
We'll
don't
convert
know.
you.
Really? You don't? You don't? I mean, damsel fly over house fly any day. No.
Shane, there's a brilliant new book by a British dipterist or fly biologist that covers the wealth of flies, because there are so many species with so many bizarre forms and behaviors.
I feel
Don't dismiss the fly.
Well, I mean, your job as
I have one here. Wait, let me tell you about this one. This one in this vial here on my desk is what's called a sheepked. And sheepkeds actually don't usually have wings. And this, one of my old boyfriends, he came after a hike, he came and found me. And he had this thing in aftershave. And he said, I found this up my nose and I thought you might like it. And then I married him. But anyway.
Wow.
He found this thing up his nose and then he put it in aftershave. Like, this is the effect entomologists have on the people around us. He knew he should put it in some alcohol. So
I would have put it in a ring and got down on one knee. That's what I would have done.
And he brought it to me and said, this is a really kind of weird fly that doesn't usually have wings.
Well, do you want to know how I wooed Dasha?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I brought her cocoons of Luna moths, and on the first night I met her, one emerged and flew off into the moonlight.
Real life magic.
Come on.
The next visit, what was the next gift?
Yeah.
It was a horsehair worm.
Okay, they're rad.
A Gordian knot worm.
Yeah.
So you know the old tale of the Gordian knot, where there's one big knot in the entrance of a city, and anybody who can untie that knot can be ruler of the city. And then Alexander the Great came in and whoosh, with his sword sliced that knot, and then he took it over, right? So cutting the Gordian knot is a phrase you'll hear now and again. The easy way to make a big gain, right? Well, these worms that are like little roundworms, but they're much longer, can tie themselves into knots. They're called horsehair worms because people thought in water troughs where horses fed, every once in a while you might find one of these worms, and they thought, oh, it's a horsehair that fell in and came to life.
Okay, but tell what they do.
Okay, so
because this part's the coolest.
I can share brilliant, beautiful videos of, well, I'll give you the first trophic level or say parasite level as an example. Here you've got a cricket, and the cricket goes to a pool or a ephemeral body of water, drinks up that water, and may lap up or imbibe immature forms, stages of the horsehair worm, and go off, keep living a cricket life until somehow it's behaviorally compelled to return to a body of water. It leaps in that water and then basically explodes. The worm writhes out, usually the anal opening, and keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming because they're especially long, round or cylindrical worms. Well, add some intrigue to that tale, one more layer. You might happen upon a southern leopard frog or some frog, and all of a sudden it's gaping its maw, like opening its mouth. And what's coming out? A nematode. So the frog may have eaten a cricket, and the nematode exits that host that is no longer a safe body to be in, and then exits the frog alive to see another day.
Wow.
Right?
Life is amazing.
amazing. This is why we're biologists.
Yeah.
Because you can't make that shit up.
That's right. That is right.
It is amazing.
So I got to go back to one thing. You mentioned dragons in that book.
Oh, yeah, dragons.
What was?
You want to learn about dragon medicine?
What was? What was that? What were they talking about? Were they talking about like
dragons?
Were they talking about like dragonflies, Komodo dragons? What kind of dragons were, or were they actually just like, there's a dragon over the hill, I can't show it to you, but here's a serum from what was going on there?
Well, unfortunately, the book I have is limited to the insects and arachnids, but it does have fishes, like the gray mullet. So I may not, it does have a snake. I take that back. I just focused on the insects. I should focus on the dragons.
I mean,
the later chapters.
Yeah. Flesh of the pangolin.
It's interesting that you saw that title. You didn't have any questions about the
He's more excited
word
about
dragon.
the insects.
Oh, yeah. Come back to me later about the dragons and I'll have some recipes for you.
All right. Well, Lyric, as far as vectors that that carry maybe the highest number of pathogens for humans, are mosquitoes number one, or are there any other things
I have
that
to
come
admit,
close?
actually, that an arachnid probably outcompetes a mosquito for the number of different kinds of pathogens that can be transmitted. Because
A spider.
Ticks.
I just got
Ticks.
done.
Oh, an arachnid. Got it.
Yeah.
I see, ticks. Okay. All right. So it was okay to still that we like spiders still. We just want to avoid ticks.
Actually are more related to spiders, because they have 8 legs.
Right. Okay.
It all comes down to legs and wings, Shane.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, let's get into mosquitoes.
Let's do it.
What in the world are we talking about with so we're maybe gonna alter their DNA so that to change the gender that they're giving birth to, so that because only females suck our blood, something like am I in the ballpark?
Yeah, all of those things. There's so many different permutations of the things we could do with altering a mosquito's DNA.
I never looked at the story or anything. I just saw the headline. I reached out to Barrett. I was like, here's the thing. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And so what's going on with the major story that got the news? And is this just, and why did it make the news? Is this just stuff that's going on I imagine this has been a long ongoing process, and probably things that have been tried in other places many times before.
Other
Other
species.
insects too, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Barrett, do you want to start?
Oh, please, Lyric.
Okay.
Yeah, Lyric.
So-
Could you choose your own adventure?
So I think that the one to which you refer was a story about the Florida Keys. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yes.
And mosquitoes that were going to be released with the idea of controlling dengue virus. So the mosquitoes that they want to control are mosquitoes called Aedes aegypti. Okay, so Aedes aegypti is one of 3,600 species of mosquito. So a mosquito is not a mosquito. It's not a mosquito. There's so many different kinds.
360,000?
3,600 different kinds.
3,000.
And that's
All
just
right.
one family of fly, right?
Yeah.
And of the 3,600 described species of mosquitoes, many more potentially waiting to be discovered and described scientifically, there are only a few hundred that really would bother to suck the blood of a human. And of those, only a few that we really need to worry about.
How often is it that you discover a new mosquito species? Pretty often, I imagine. If you
Well, we
got
just did it last
3,600.
year here in Wisconsin. One of my graduate students is a bona fide taxonomist, and so he devoted his PhD to looking at mosquitoes in this particular group that were in Wisconsin and also in Argentina and Brazil and Cuba. And so like this, he was looking at this different, or that this particular kind of mosquito and doing what we call a taxonomic revision, which means there are issues with the way we name those mosquitoes. And so he was working on unraveling those issues. So he was doing some sampling for mosquitoes in the UW Madison Arboretum and found a mosquito that just didn't properly align with all of the other mosquitoes in a key. And the way that you do this is sometimes you have to do things like tease out the male genitalia of the mosquito in order to be able to say, right? I'm blushing a little now. So I have a really funny story about this genitalia. But anyway, the genitalia just didn't match up to anything that had ever been described before. And so he described this, based on how it looks. And then we also did a little molecular identification, and we'll have a new mosquito called Anopheles mirabilis.
I mean,
wow.
I
and,
think,
What? Oh,
and this is a group of insects that's super well sampled because people are always worried about what's out there and what's transmitting disease, right? If we can still find new mosquitoes, you can imagine how much discovery potential there is.
Because we're paying attention to mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Lyric. So,
by the way, did my voice just change a little bit?
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot.
And not in a prepubescent kind of way.
In a good way, right? It's slightly better.
That's right. It's lower.
I forgot to check a heading. I forgot to check a setting ahead of time, but it's good. I got it.
That gives me time to ask Lyric a question.
Yeah.
For mosquitoes, is it typically a lock and key mechanism? Are they that distinct that you can say male 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕏 fits with the female, the male genitalia fits with the female genitalia?
No.
Okay.
What do you lock and key mechanism with?
The idea that you can have one a sex within one species match with the genitalia structurally of the other sex of the species by a lock and key, like it fits perfectly in.
Yeah.
And there's some species that tends to be.
This lady,
I'm sure there's some.
This lady has a oval opening. This fella has a oval shaped thing, and then
It gets really wild and extreme, especially in some beetles and some fly species. Bill Eberhard has a marvelous. He's done a lot of work. He's in Costa Rica. Done a lot of work pairing genitalia, spiders, flies, beetles, showing the remarkable lengths, spiral shapes, all manner of things that are species specific.
That's if you're at a bar and someone asks you what you do, I pair genitalia. You're a matchmaker?
Right.
Sort of. I mean, people. I imagine the average listener that's never heard about fly and various insect penises before is like that probably sounds strange. Like, why is this person teasing out the male genitalia? I think knowing a little, the little I know about fly, the male fly's organs, I think it would be crazy to not want to have a little peek at that thing
out. Right,
and see what's going on there. It's, I mean, arguably some of the most sophisticated genitalia in any living thing, I would say. No,
So
is that bold? Is that a controversial statement?
Rick, I'll let you handle this controversy.
Oh, well, I was thinking actually about this beautiful set of videos, the Green Porno series.
Oh yeah, by Rossellini.
Yeah.
Isabella Rossellini.
Yeah, if you haven't seen, she has a whole segment on diverse shape of penises that is well worth, dare I say, taking in.
I've seen.
Brilliant.
I've seen
but
some
do
of her
take
stuff.
note of the exploding honeybee drone by
Amazing.
Isabella Rossellini.
Yes, amazing.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you'd be a fool to not want to look under the hood or tease out the hood, or what is it? I
Right.
guess that's.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, so the student had like on a flash drive that I was using had files of images of male genitalia, and so the folder names were male genitalia. And I happened to go to a scientific conference where I took one of those thumb drives with the folders that said male genitalia and had my PowerPoint also in this thumb drive. And then I put the thumb drive in, and the whole room sees that I have like 4 gigs of male genitalia images in folders. So I ripped the thumb drive out. I'm like, I swear they're insect.
Well, before computers, you were showing up to a conference with just boxes of files labeled male genitalia.
This is the life of an
she's got a hobby.
entomologist. Yes.
I mean, I love that. I mean, this is I like that this person's made themselves just a real student of it. That they can look under a microscope and be like, there's
Different?
3,600 known male mosquito penises. This guy looks at a penis like, I haven't seen a penis like this before.
Quite like that. This is how the eye of an entomologist works.
That's absolutely
Shane,
amazing.
We all have our own search images, right?
Yes.
And I just wanted to mention that this past year, I've had the honor privilege of forming a collaboration with Lyric in her lab, and an undergraduate in my lab, Drew Liesecker, has done work looking for the potential vector of an old disease in the area in La Crosse, Wisconsin, that actually rendered a handful of children dead in the 1970s. And so it seems to have vanished. We're on the hunt for the presumed vector, which exists. In fact, it seems to be the most numerous one around. So what happened locally to this disease? And that's a big question. And so the idea of thinking about what seems trivial, like teasing out these male genitalia to distinguish whether it's this species or that species. Aren't all mosquitoes the same if the females are sucking human blood? No. There may be very special traits or characteristics from species to species that make one a better vector than another to potentially a life-threatening virus in this case.
So I kind of wanted to ask about when is it that humans started, as you both were showing all these books and some of the history of this stuff, when is it that humans kind of started picking up on insects as a possible vector? Because it's a common story that I hear in germ theory is like they were doing autopsies in this hospital, and then they go and deliver babies right afterwards with very proud of their bloody hands. That shows that they were working very hard, and they're wondering why females or babies or whatever in this particular hospital are seeming to have higher rates of whatever disease it was. A
bacterial laden one in that case. That's right.
Yeah, and but I would think that I have a friend who does some anthropology in Peru, works with these Shipibo people who plant tobacco plants around their area, and kind of they say, it keeps the spirits away, or like the angels, or I forget how exactly they phrase it. It's something like that in the kind of like alien anthropologist functionality of it is that the tobacco is working as a insecticide, but their kind of conscious narrative that they're telling themselves is that it's good luck or whatever to have. So do we have a sense of when humans might have started picking up on these notions of insects as vectors for disease or bad luck or illness?
I'm going to add one more tale of ignorance. During Black Plague, Samuel Pepys' diaries mentions, actually, the book I just showed, Micrographia, with the image of the flea. So the flea is a vector of the plague, right? But at the time, they didn't know that. They didn't make that association. Eric, is there a first case scenario that people have documented well?
So people have known the burden of mosquito-borne disease for thousands of years. And so, there's certainly ancient texts that document the symptoms associated with things like malaria. And we can find, buried people from thousands and thousands of years ago and detect malaria parasites in their bodies or typhus or other sort of vector-borne diseases in their bodies. So we know that people have struggled with these things for a long time. But it was around the 1800s that the first, at least documented incident that I know of where this connection was really made in a scientific way was a doctor who was deployed by the British in the Philippines, and his name is Sir Patrick Manson. He noted that people had this disease, elephantiasis. And elephantiasis is a really brutal, stigmatizing illness where a person has struggles with the lymph not moving properly in their bodies anymore.
That's
right?
A rough Google image.
It's
be
really
warned.
Yep, and the Encyclopedia Britannica, when I was a kid, had some pretty poignant images of people who were infected with this. And so it's a really debilitating disease because lymph builds up in your legs, or in men, it sometimes pools in the scrotum, and it slows you down. It leads to all these secondary infections, so you're not feeling well. So this British physician was treating patients who had elephantiasis, and he was, autopsying people who had died, and he found these parasites in their bodies. And the parasites were fairly long. These nematodes, actually the same thing that Barrett was talking about in relationship to the horse hairs and the knots, another kind of nematode, was in the lymph ducts of these people who had this disease. And then he also noticed that there were little versions of those parasites circulating in the blood of infected people. And he did some math because he knew what the little ones were looking like and how big they were. And he looked at how big the big ones were. And he decided if every one of those little worms circulating in the blood achieved the size of the adult parasite, there would no longer be any space in the blood vessels of these people. So there had to be some sort of intermediate that was taking the blood with the parasites and growing the parasites up and transferring it elsewhere. And there were several people who were starting to think about bloodsuckers and transmission of pathogens to livestock, for example. So people were starting to think, well, maybe the bloodsuckers have a role in the epidemiology of these different diseases. So Sir Patrick Manson did some work, and he fed mosquitoes on infected people and figured that this would take some time. So he dissected the mosquitoes over time, and he saw that the little parasites from the blood grew. And he drew these beautiful diagrams of how the parasites grow and what they look like under a microscope. thanks to the book Barrett showed you earlier. Right? So he saw that the parasites grow and develop. And then he thought, well, the way this probably happens, like a horsehair worm then, is that the mosquito goes to lay eggs in the water and she dies and the parasites get out and then somebody drinks the water and that's how they get infected. So he had figured out parts of the life cycle, but he missed the part, which is that actually it's when the mosquito goes and feeds again that the parasite brute force crawls out of her face and into the skin of the next potential host. And so he started to document that process. Then some other people, Sir Ronald Ross working in India, figured that this may be applied to malaria and started feeding mosquitoes on people who had malaria and saw parasites develop in the mosquito. And then Walter Reed, whose name has come up in the news recently.
This is this is the most topical episode I've ever done.
So Walter Reed was the first person, and this was right around 1900, to show then that he too was thinking, well, yellow fever maybe is associated with mosquitoes, and there was good reason to believe that. And so Walter Reed in Cuba took volunteers and exposed them to different scenarios where so they thought that yellow fever maybe was transmitted by fomites, which means inanimate objects contaminated with the bloody material of people who are dying of yellow fever. So if you have yellow fever, like you bleed out your eyes and you turn yellow and get jaundiced and have all this horrible hemorrhaging and die, terrible death. And so he had some volunteers lying on soiled bedding from people who had died from yellow fever. And he had other volunteers in tents.
Oh, pick me.
Yep. And if you survive, we'll give you some cash. And we, as a result, have some more rules and regulations about how you work with human subjects, thank goodness. But anyway, then he had another tent where he had volunteers who were exposed to mosquitoes that had fed on people who had yellow fever. So he put loaded mosquitoes that he fed on people and let them sit for a while and then put them into the tent. And he showed conclusively that it's not the people who are sleeping on bloody bedclothes that get infected, but it's the people who've been fed upon by infected mosquitoes that get yellow fever. And so that work was done not all that long ago, right? Like 120 years ago, but that's how we began to understand that mosquitoes are involved in the transmission of these different pathogens.
Amazing. And of course we would have had, like many mammals, natural aversions to different aspects of the environment. I mean, there's don't like elephants kind of like fan off bugs and stuff with their tails or ears or whatever. You would think if it would have improved humans' inclusive fitness to be bit by mosquitoes, it would probably feel orgasmic, or it would feel like getting a massage or something. It'd be something you would look forward to.
What's interesting though is, like, after you get so many bites, you often become tolerant of it. So I, for example, have some mosquitoes that still give me really horrible itchy bites, but other mosquitoes can feed on me and I hardly know that they've been there.
And that's change that's developed over time for you, Lyric? So it's like a beekeeper, like if I get stung at the beginning of the season versus toward the end of the season, it'll be very different. Huh.
Is that a thing with beekeepers?
Yeah, that's right. Although unusual
and then
things
after in the winter you find yourself missing those stings.
Now, strangely, allergens can act in odd ways, and you can have the rare beekeeper who's worked with bees for 30 plus years all of a sudden go into anaphylaxis. Anaphylactic shock.
I thought
we also find that those elements of the bee sting, right, the venom that you get as a result, have some really interesting pharmaceutical properties that are super beneficial too.
Multiple sclerosis, some say for asthma. There are all kinds of uses for well-placed stings. In fact, my honeybee mentor years ago would sting his mother to help with her asthma.
Really?
He didn't do it personally with his modified ovipositor or egg-laying device, but through a bee. Because as we know,
Interesting.
only females have egg-laying devices.
Yes, as we know. The evolution of the sting. This is, I imagine there's got to be some people out there. Justin Schmidt comes to mind that have a bit of like a sting fetish. Over what's that?
I love him. He's so fascinating.
Yes.
He's just such a character. We had him come and give a talk at a meeting once, and he actually brought wasps in like jars shoved in big tube socks. And he carried it on the plane with him.
Was he wearing a
That's
shirt
great.
with his book on it?
No, it was,
say
it was
yes.
right before his book was published, actually.
Oh, okay. Since his entire wardrobe changed.
But if your listeners
only wears
don't
a
know,
t-shirt with his,
yeah, with that.
with
But
his own book
if your
on it.
listeners don't know Justin Schmidt, the man came up with a pain index
Yeah.
to describe the sensation of a variety of stings.
I had him on the podcast, and we
Oh,
talked
good.
all about the evolution of the insect sting and the what would the correct word be, the coapting of the kind of the egg storage ish area. Please help me.
The ovipositor, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I
And
was
the reservoir
that was
that-
correct ish. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We interpreted. And so you know, when you think about like a social insect that's wanting to defend its colony or home, as compared to a mosquito, they really have to have quite different interactions with the mammal with which they're interacting, say. So, right, like a stinging hymenopteran wants you to go away. If it's you know, more social, typically, right? The more social ones are the ones that are best adapted to repel you by stinging you and causing you pain. And the opposite is true of a mosquito. So a mosquito really benefits more from being kind of stealthy and not causing you a whole hell of a lot of pain in the process of taking blood. And so that's all dictated instead of by what's coming out of her ovipositor. It's by what's coming out of her spit glands with saliva. So the mosquito spits in you as she's blood feeding, and she leaves behind things like proteins that are maybe a little anesthetic, so you're not feeling pain, or proteins that do things like dilate your blood vessels, so your blood flows more readily to the spot where she's feeding.
So is itchiness potentially this adaptation that we have, or the itchiness is just a byproduct of this unavoidable spandrel, or whatever you would say, of kind of
that's
other
good,
things
yeah.
going on?
Yeah, so it's the
A spandrel is kind of the intersection of two or multiple functional things that kind of look like something that resembles having functionality, but isn't
It's
like
just
intended. Decoration, right? I'm just making sure I'm using things properly.
It's always, I think that's really astute, Shane. We always have to think in terms of, is this a product of natural selection as a biologist, or could it be explained by other means? Is it a phylogenetic constraint? Does it just come with you being you and who you're most closely related to?
Right.
Is it a spandrel? And in the case of mosquito bite, you know, some find it really annoying to scratch
annoying.
that itching bite, and others of us find it stimulating. So
and sometimes, like for me, I don't even get the bite. And I just worked on a comic book with some really amazing comic artists from Marvel.
what? Which
Yes.
comic?
I made my own with some colleagues of mine.
You're kidding! Can I see it?
Yes, I'll send it to you.
Wow!
I think you
Yeah,
did.
it's
Didn't
called-
you just put this on Twitter or something
Maybe.
recent?
Somebody
That's
from
fantastic.
somebody from that project may have posted it, but our book is called Mosquitoes Suck. And part of what we're teaching people is that a mosquito doesn't actually bite. You know, like it doesn't have the kind of mandibles where it just like chews on you. Instead, she, you know, burrows her mouth parts under your skin and sucks.
So Marvel is going to produce an entomologically educational comic book?
So what happened actually is that a Marvel comic artist, and several of them actually, work as free agents. And so they're made famous by having done work like drawing Spider-Man. And one of the guys who drew me, which is super exciting to me, did Ren and Stimpy.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And Shane's looking at me like he doesn't even know what's going on.
No, I just have too many questions again.
This is remarkable.
Remember, I warned you about the glaze.
Cool. Okay.
I told you it's a glaze of enthusiasm over my eyes.
I thought it was because you don't know who Ren and Stimpy are.
No, I do. Okay. I remember Ren and Stimpy well.
Wow, I have now even new layers of respect and admiration for you, Lyric.
I can't wait to show this to you. It is so cool. And
do you know what I watched last night?
Oh, tell.
The Comic Book Confidential from 1989 or so.
Maybe I'll do that tonight.
It's great. But it has some of the heroes and the controversies of the origins of comic books.
Oh, I'd like to see it. So part of what we get at in the book is we talk about mosquitoes suck, but mosquitoes suck because they need blood in order to grow a batch of eggs. And so we talk about the perils of being a mosquito mom and try to actually, I know this is crazy, but we actually try to build empathy in the audience for the plight of a mosquito. It's not an easy life to be a bloodsucker.
I love that.
and then we talk about, this kind of battle between mosquitoes and human beings, and whether we should try and wipe out all the mosquitoes, and what are the consequences if we wipe out all of the mosquitoes, which gets back to the question that we started with, which was what's going on in Key West, right?
This was meant to be the whole purpose of the show. We're almost done. I mean, it's not unusual for me to never get to the actual reason why I actually had people on, and I can't keep you forever, but we should at least touch on it a little bit before I have to. Or do you guys have a hard out? Do either you have to skedaddle for something? Or you have a little
I've got
time?
Mosquito poems I've got to read before this is through.
Yeah, of course.
Good. So I'll tell you just a teeny bit about what's happening in Florida.
Can I real quick?
Yeah.
Mosquito bite. Mosquito bite advice.
Are you going to ask if you can tense up your muscle to explode the mosquito?
No,
this urban legend.
No. The itching, you're supposed to itch kind of around on the sides. I believe that it like kind of tricks an aspect of your pain reception neurologic to think that, and so you're not irritating the actual bite, but you're still satiating that. Or
you're not like actually tearing your skin open and leaving a scabby mark there.
Yeah.
So I think there's a variety of reasons. People will say like take a fingernail if you have fingernails or something sort of semi-sharp and poke it or make an X over it, and that somehow relieves. But
you guys don't have there's not a well-known scientific consensus best practice on...
I only have a solution as to how to alleviate the itch of a mosquito bite on a phantom limb.
Oh, see, not very helpful then, right?
Yeah, it won't help you.
Really?
That'll be another episode.
Another
episode.
Yeah, it's a whole other episode.
You can't just...
Let's just say I wrote the solution. I just mentioned it in the margin of a book, and I didn't have room in that margin to write the whole theorem.
Okay, all right.
We can work on that together.
Yeah,
it'll be a collaborative effort. But it is. So what I've told you though is that it's an immune response, right? So this is your body rejecting and responding to the fact that mosquito spit under your skin, and so hydrocortisone or some of those sort of topical creams that you might put on something itchy should help alleviate the pain. You can scratch it however you want to scratch it, Shane.
We'll support you.
We will totally support you. If you think that works and that helps you, then just yes. You
I actually do that X kind of thing.
You do the X.
Yeah, I do. It's kind of.
That's very I don't know.
It's
what I
such
was
a
trying to
case by
say.
case thing,
It's-
Shane.
Yeah.
We haven't tried the baking soda thing. Have you ever done the baking soda thing after a sting, Barrett?
Only poison ivy.
Yeah.
I have done it after a sting. I don't. It gives a cooling sensation. I haven't found that it did very much for me.
I had this 𝕊𝕤𝕒𝕟𝕣𝕪 in my shower this
Oh, you
summer.
did? Wow.
This massive
Assassin bug.
bug in my shower, and I saw it kind of
Should
going,
be called the Hitler bug,
perhaps.
right?
It was.
Is that what we were saying earlier?
It'd be better than this beetle, but you should
Okay.
never. For all the taxonomists in your audience, please don't burden a species with a politician's name.
Yeah, that's an important point to make for
But you have a friend who's
all
naming
the taxonomists.
slime mold eating beetles after Dick and Cheney. Dick
But
Cheney and
it's
Donald Rumsfeld.
not. Sadly, it's not.
Otherwise,
with
a good
irony.
person. We don't like that aspect. We don't all. But otherwise, he's a nice guy. Good scientist. Otherwise.
Okay, anyway, I'm telling you a story. So
Yes.
All right.
this is my quick story. So
Assassin in the shower. This is a psycho
in my
episode.
I know exactly. It was like that except smaller. And so I went to pick this thing up because it was getting really close to the drain hole, and I knew that it wasn't a good idea to get my finger close to that thing's rostrum. But I felt like it was about to go down the drain, and so I reached down, not being able to find anything else to scoop it up, and it just tagged me. And it was like, oh, I should have had Justin Schmidt's pain index, but it was hot stabbing pain in my finger, and I actually screamed and insisted
Screams a
that,
3 out of 4.
but
at
for me,
least.
I think there should be a different scale for men and women.
Not necessarily.
I don't know. Well,
Thanks a lot.
because the average honeybee domestica is
Apis mellifera at level 2. That's kind of a baseline.
that's a
Okay, no,
level
this
2.
is much worse. This is
So
like
that'd be a
this was bad.
3. 4,
And so then I
4
screamed
should
at my
feel
partner.
like you're chained to the side of a volcano as lava is coming out. I think. That's one of
All
the-
right, so maybe it wasn't
one
a
of the
4. But
descriptions.
anyway, I screamed to Medi to run and get me some baking soda and made a poultice and rubbed it on this gaping hole this assassin bug had made. And it did provide immediate relief, and I did not have a long term.
Wow.
Like,
But I haven't
arc.
been zapped by. I don't think I've been zapped by a 𝕊𝕤𝕟𝕣𝕪. Now, did you do the smart thing and have the same bug bite the other person just to see if it would garner the same response or elicit the same
I have to admit that I
That
got
is
a
the
little
responsible
emotional.
thing.
I got a little emotional and retaliatory, and I let that thing go down.
Don't
went
even
down the
say
drain.
it. Lyric, no.
It went down the drain.
Let the 𝕊𝕤𝕟𝕣𝕪 go free.
I would have absolutely.
To
I
bite another
tried,
day.
but then it tagged me, and I was screaming, and it went down the drain. And I was like, okay, well then, that's what happens.
So normally you see an insect in the shower, it's going to go down the drain. You try to save it. That's the idea.
That's actually what I do.
I would have
Spiders
never
as well.
thought to do that.
Same
All
here.
right, new practice. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have collecting jars all over the house.
All right. All right. So we got this idea.
Back to Florida.
We don't want. We know mosquitoes are potentially causing all the spread of all these pathogens, and we got this new fancy DNA editing, CRISPR, this and that we can do, and we can make it so that when that wonderful exposed male genitalia is the key that goes into a lock and fertilizes the female, her eggs will only be males.
Shane,
So that what
I've
am I
got to
screwing up?
interject.
Yeah.
In
Stop me.
order to make this the most topical episode of all time,
Yeah.
I want to add 2 things. You just
Please.
mentioned CRISPR, and the 2 latest Nobel laureates helped to develop CRISPR.
Wow. That
Yeah,
is
and this was just announced 2 days ago. Another topical item. We haven't once mentioned Fosse yet, correct?
no, not yet.
But in 2016, he entered the discussion/debate as to whether or not mosquitoes should be eradicated. Can you guess which side he fell on?
I'm going to say Fosse was... What is... So this is just a binary, you either eradicate them or you don't,
op-ed
kind
piece,
of.
although he did qualify
I would say
within the
that
op-ed.
you keep them. He's saying that you keep them. He kills them. Oh, wow. Well,
So I lost a little
this
respect for him, although he did mention valid points within the op-ed piece. And one of those valid points was that it's impossible for us to actually eradicate them. And he did mention that there are over 3,000 species.
So let's cross that bridge when we get there, kind of an argument. We're so far from having to worry about that getting rid of some of them and lowering mosquito populations would be in human interest. It is interesting that we like to put a face on these huge systems. It makes us. I think it's easier to just wrap your head around things where, like, Trump is the face of the Republican Party or whatever. Fosse, which I actually do think that Trump is the face of something significant. But then I mean, people are like, Fosse is the face of science, or like Einstein was the face of physics or whatever, and it really, or Justin Schmidt is the face of entomology or something, and you have this idea where that kind of neglects all of the different underlying things that are happening behind the scenes of science, and the variety of different points of view. And people seem to think like a scientist, like say Fosse's opinion is the exact opinion of all of the scientific community.
Well, it's a complex world, and it's easier if we can absorb a soundbite.
Yeah.
And if we can think in terms of rhetoric, platitudes, simple phrases, statements, binary yeas or nays. And the argument is a complex one, and I hope we have time to get into it because I have strong feelings about it. I imagine Lyric might have some strong feelings about it too. And but I diverted attention just for topicality's sake to bring in Fosse and to bring in the two recent Nobel laureates for CRISPR. But Lyric, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Florida Keys venture by this company that's had some history with genetically engineering insects and what their stalled plans may result in with respect to.
And if you don't mind throwing a few platitudes in there just to make it easier for us.
Huge.
I'll eat them up.
It's going to be really big.
Spit them back out.
I'm kind of an anti-platitudist, but
it's great.
Check. Oh, move on. Oh, good. It'll solve our problems. Check.
So you probably have kind of intuited that I am not an advocate for eradicating any species, and I think we just have to flip that conversation. Oxytec is the company that's working in the Keys to release mosquitoes that are going to reproductively fail. So it's brilliant technology they've been working on for a really long time. It's kind of rooted in this idea of sterile insects that have been used pretty successfully to control things like screwworm. That's a really cool story.
That's called Shane Maussing an insect, actually, when you design something to be a reproductive failure.
That might be an insult to your mother. Anyway,
not to me. I'm quite proud of it. It's a badge of honor.
So the idea is that you release these mosquitoes. They actually raise mosquitoes in the lab, and they feed them on tetracycline.
Mm-hmm.
And once the mosquitoes get out into the environment and they mate with natural mosquitoes, the products of that mating will have that same need for tetracycline in order to survive. And so without it there in their feed, they die.
Without it there, they get to have a lot of costless, fun, casual sex.
Casual sex.
And
it's the keys, right? It's Florida
no
keys,
cost
so
on their individual lives. I love this. Crisp me up. I want to be crisped. Crisp. What was that word that just shot out of my mouth?
Okay,
That was like a 4-year-old that just learned about DNA.
Oh no, I'm actually just totally going to use that. But so this is not. It's not actually CRISPR technology, but we are working on that certainly in mosquitoes too. So Oxitec's been working on this idea for a long time, and they're at a point where they actually can deliver a product to communities that need some kind of intervention for mosquito control. And if you're recreating in the Florida Keys, you probably don't want to get dengue. And so, if we have some way to control the mosquitoes, it's really useful. And this is really, really cool technology. It's totally worth a shot. But I would say that the goal, in my mind, whenever it comes to an entomological issue, shouldn't be eradication. It should be reducing the population to a level where the mosquitoes aren't a threat to human health. And also that we should never rely on a single strategy alone. We know that this is a catastrophically bad idea. So, like for decades, we just hit mosquitoes across the globe with DDT, and that was going to be the end of malaria. They told people in the 1950s, don't bother studying medical entomology. It's a dying field. We have ways to control mosquitoes. And I'm here in 2020 still doing that work. So really thought, that one single controls approach would kill all the mosquitoes. And I think it's a bad idea to imagine that just one thing is a silver bullet.
And I'm going to be a little bit more extreme, and this will not gain me any fans on this show or beyond. But even limiting numbers, absolute numbers, let alone diversity of organisms, is hugely problematic from an environmental perspective. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of organisms that rely on, yes, species of and abundances of mosquitoes as food. And that can include the aquatic immatures for aquatics, fish and others.
Bats?
All the way to the adults, bats. Yeah, especially bats,
and
but
birds.
A lot of other
all kinds of songbirds eat mosquitoes.
People are, look at this. Boom. Bat shirt.
Oh, beautiful.
People have been hating bats lately. That's the other, people are trying to eradicate bats now because of COVID. It's like, I actually had someone listen to, I had a bat researcher on explain why that would be a bad idea. And I had one listener, which I'm grateful that someone was open-minded and critical thinker, but listened to the whole episode and was like, yep, still not convinced. I don't want there to be bats. Okay.
That person and others should look into Bat Conservation International with all their excellent messages coming out of Austin, Texas.
Yeah. So
I want to just tag off of Barrett and say, sure. I fundamentally I'm a naturalist first. I think all entomologists are intrigued first by the beauty and diversity of insects, and I really get so uncomfortable with the idea of eradicating a species and eradicating mosquitoes. What's that mean? We get rid of 3,600 species?
And Lyric, you're probably aware of this paper that was published, let's see, it was Fang 2010 in Nature. And there was several responses to this, I think, naively written piece that tried to explore the idea of eradicating mosquitoes. Not a single species. It was vaguely written. So the idea is just destroy mosquitoes, right? And the responses were interesting in print as well as online. And actually, I've got a quote here from one writer who responded. I thought this was well worded. So Fang wrote, "There's not enough evidence of ecosystem disruption here to give the eradicators pause for thought." Okay, let's think about that. There's not enough evidence of disruption by this eradication procedure to cause any trepidation or hesitation to send out a chemical or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. But the response by one of the readers was, and I utterly agree with this, it implies that it must be proven that eradicating mosquitoes will have an adverse impact, whereas it should be the other way around. The burden of proof should lie with the eradicators. Before the idea of eradicating 3,500 species of mosquito for the benefit of one, humans, is seriously considered, it must be proven that eradication will not affect our complex ecosystems. We shouldn't forget the precautionary principle.
Yeah, I mean, even if you were to say get rid of a species of mosquito or bats, for instance, that just were the species that nearly got eradicated or not nearly went extinct in New England, with that got the the white nose fungus. That's another species of bat flourished in their absence, and if say you were going to go, hey, this one species is bad, let's get rid of it. If another species that moves in and comes that could potentially be worse, or what, it just seems like there's so many unknown. It seems like it wouldn't necessarily solve anything. And I'll say, as let me set myself up for failure and argue with. Play devil's advocate against two far more knowledgeable people. Let's say from just help me walk through logic from just like a humanist perspective. So I don't care about whether or not humans play gods. I think that ship has sailed. I say I don't really necessarily care about like a mosquito's feelings or whether it lives or dies or something like that. But I do care about a diverse and stable ecosystem insofar as it serves me, and I care, and therefore I care about species ranked on like some level of how much of a keystone species they are. So say like you snap your fingers and all dogs disappear. Well, we'll probably find a way to move on. You snap your fingers and all bees disappear, and society, human society might collapse. So therefore, I think that bees are a more important species for my own interest as a humanist. So that is to say that if I don't care about if we're playing God. I don't care about if we're driving, say, a species of mosquito extinct just because, for the sake of caring about extinction, is not a nice thing to do or whatever. What reasons are there to not do it because of the potential negative impacts on humans?
Can I start with just saying that science is the most powerful, informative vehicle to understand natural phenomena, to understand how the world and the cosmos operates, right? What we have with science is ideally the ability to predict things. That's when it's most powerful. So I think we as biologists, ecologists, naturalists, we know enough to be cautious. We don't know enough to realize all of the potential rippling effects that one disappearance can cause. Mm-hmm. And And that's why I agree with the person who wrote in that we should follow a precautionary principle, certainly within reason. I think there are a lot of arguments that have that caution as the driver for us to reconsider eradicating any species on the planet. And we could talk about an extreme, like something that's arguably not even living, like smallpox virus, which raged as a debate. Should we utterly eliminate it from the couple of labs in US and Russia where it exists? Should it be gone from the planet forever? Or should we maintain it? Is there value in maintaining it?
Yeah. Well, now let me one more devil's advocate, and this is...
And Lyric, I went off on one direction, but if you want to add, extrapolate, or... Okay.
I would.
Sure?
I guess the one thing that I would just say is that I appreciate your human-centric sort of devil's advocate approach, and if I were to come at it from a mosquito's perspective, or from the perspective of any other animal or plant on the planet, I would, from that perspective, say, well, what the hell good is a human?
Right.
If we talk about environmental impacts, humans are the worst.
Oh, I mean, listen, you're preaching to the choir if you want to. I'm all for getting crisped. Is that what I said before? CRISPR. I think birth control is the single greatest human invention, and there's many more improvements to be made in that regard. I wish I was on some male birth control at this very moment, but I wonder, as entomologist and another kind of devil's advocate, if you were to say, I mean, you guys love insects. If you were to say, hey, there's this issue, it's not an abundance of mosquitoes, it's that this mosquito population is dying on its own. These bats are got this unexpected fungus, which that was from humans, so it's not necessarily the best argument to make, but regardless, and there's something that we can do to help bring them back. There's something that we can do to, we're trying to do this with saving extinct species all of the time, usually in large mammals because they're closer to our size, so we tend to care about them more. But what do you think about altering things in the other direction?
Ooh, that's fun.
Now that could bring us into the debate in terms of revitalizing a Pleistocene period, where we're trying to bring back now extinct mammals to bring back, say, for example, the prairies of the U.S.
The what of the U.S.?
Prairies.
Yeah,
it could go in a lot of interesting directions. Can you truly bring back an extinct species? Do you expect the same ecological scenario to play out? It's one direction the discussion could go in. In terms of salvaging a species on the decline, I think there are unknowable and innumerable reasons to consider salvaging a species, even if it's for a human-centric and anthropocentric stance. So the idea of unknown medicinal properties,
Right.
or unknown, you name it, possible benefits to humans, but beyond that, the unknowables in terms of how their immediate environments or their ecological scenarios, their ecosystem functioning plays out.
Yeah. All right. Convinced. I don't. I would give more pushback.
Boy, the
if
devil
I could,
would fire
but
you.
I know.
Okay, you're fired.
I'm not. I'm definitely not the best minion. Like, The devil usually likes minions with a lot more like gusto and drive.
Yes, minions.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about or go over before we wrap up, or
Well,
is that?
Barrett has a poem.
Oh,
I have 1,002 things I'd like to share, but I do have 2 poems.
let's hear it.
Okay, one is from Insecticides, an anthology. And yes, 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕟𝕒 wrote a poem about mosquitoes.
Ooh.
They are born in the swamps of sleeplessness. They are a viscous blackness which wings about. Little frail vampires, miniature dragonflies, small picadors with the devil's own sting. Now, on a bit more forgiving note, in the Anthology of American Poetry, I've been reading to my 5-year-old who laps this stuff up. He's been reading these works by American poets, and I didn't realize that the novelist John Updike also wrote poetry, including Mosquito. On the fine wire of her wine she walked, unseen in the ominous bedroom dark. A traitor to her camouflage she talked, a thirsty blue streak distinct as a spark. I was to her a fragrant lake of blood, from which she had to sip a drop or die. A reservoir, a lavish field of food. I lay awake, unconscious of my size. We seemed fair-matched opponents. Soft she dropped down like an anchor on her thread of song. Her nose sank thankfully in. Then I slapped at the sting on my arm, cunning and strong. A cunning, strong gargantua I struck, this lover pinned in the feast of my flesh. Lulled by my blood, relaxed, half-sated, stuck, engrossed in the gross rivers of myself. Success! Without a cry the creature died, became a fleck of fluff upon the sheet. The small welt of remorse subsides as side by side we, murderer and murdered, sleep.
That's lovely.
Love it.
Yeah. That's a solid one.
And I'm so
The
excited
first one
that
left me wanting more, but that's not a bad thing.
I'm so
but-
excited that this is recorded for perpetuity, so I can listen to you read it to me again. This is so much better with you narrating it, Barrett.
I've discovered so many new favorite poets in here.
I'll have to get that.
Lyric, I'll read you some more.
Great. I'm so glad we're friends.
As long as I can take your parasitology.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think you have a long ways to go before you're ready for doing guided ruminations. But insect poetry, I want no one else to read to me. You guys were fantastic. Is there anything that you would like to plug? Do you have Lyric? Are you on Twitter or anything?
I am on Twitter as Bartholomay Lab, but also I'm part of something called the Urban Ecosystems Project at Iowa State University, where we do mosquito learning with kids and families, particularly in underserved communities. It's really, really fun work. So I'd like to plug that one.
Amazing.
And soon my Mosquitoes Suck book that I was talking about will be out, that I wrote with colleagues. So
I want to purchase copies
spring.
of that.
Spring
In the spring.
2021. Awesome.
Yep.
And Barrett has all sorts of on his website. What is it? BarrettKlein.com has like a lot of great. No, not even close.
𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕟𝕒.
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
You know what a
Pupating dot-
holometabolous, a fully metamorphosing insect does? It goes through a pupal stage. Pupating. Pupating.org.
Ah.
I have a few recommendations.
Okay.
A good friend of mine produced or self-published, a companion to Cosmopolitan's slime molds.
Oh, beautiful.
Beautifully illustrated. Second, now this is an odd one. I had this as a boy, 1978, but I've rediscovered it. Dr. Bay's Bedside Bug Book. It's one of the strangest illustrated books I've ever read by Derek Pell. It's a weird one.
I want that one too.
And then the third one, this just in, 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕪𝕒, French artist who presently has a show up in Paris, if you happen to be in Paris, Shane, if you jump from La Crosse to Paris during a pandemic. And he also just produced a work that is exquisite. It's a tour de force. It's his magnum opus, 𝕊𝕤𝕒𝕟 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕟𝕒, or The Caddisfly's Mirror by 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕪𝕒. It's one of the most beautiful, comprehensive books on a topic I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I had to purchase it online. If you want information about that, I can pass it along.
$3,000?
It
looks like that's a huge
It was 55
book.
euros. So it ended up being
That's
something like,
bargain.
I don't know, $60.
What do we got there?
But
about
for what it is,
1,200 pages?
It's so amazing because it's so beautifully illustrated with not just, it's 630 pages or so, but it's not only exquisitely illustrated in terms of the insect, this order of odd insects most closely related to moths and butterflies called Trichoptera. Many of the species build cases, protective cases as immatures in water. But it touches on cultural entomology throughout. So how do caddisflies play in human life and culture throughout history? It's really brilliant.
Can I tell you that I have some caddisflies that are literally near and dear to my heart because there's this phenomenal artist who gives caddisflies certain stones, precious stones.
The Stouts, Ben and Kathy Stout, right?
Yeah, and so I have caddisfly jewelry where the caddis pupa or
they got it from 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕪𝕒.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So 𝕊𝕙𝕒𝕪𝕒 is the original artist who does that, collaborates with the caddisflies.
Oh, it's so cool.
That's exciting that you have some jewelry from, I bet.
Okay, and then I also actually want to make a plug for this product. So as we're doing some teaching with extension teachers and educators around the globe on how to teach kids and learn with kids about mosquitoes. And we bought these really cool wide macro lenses. And this thing just clips onto your telephone, to your smartphone, and turns your smartphone into a microscope.
Yeah.
Really?
So fun.
Yeah, those are really nice. I had a ex that got one of those for taking pictures, and she was so fond of it that I bought it as a gift for another lady I was wooing too. After the relationship, I was just like, yeah, that's a solid.
So you need one of these, Shane, so that you can look close. You can look closer at Musca domestica.
Actually, for the future,
cool.
we probably need binoculars when we have more such debate flies.
Indeed.
All right. Well, I can't wait to get myself some new equipment. Start teasing out those male insect penises, and hopefully discover some new species.
You know,
we can all take
who
part in
knew
science.
that an entomologist or two could be so inspiring?
It really changed my life.
It's a new future. Shane, you're already wearing so many hats. It'll be interesting to see how this plays a role in your life as an insect genitalia expert.
Yeah, I know. I
can come do a degree in my lab.
I'm doing so many things. Yeah, I'm into it. I need something to do now that stand-up comedy is no longer a thing. So, I'm up for
you're
it.
advocating science is fantastic.
I love doing it. You guys are awesome. I hope to have you both on again sometime soon. Lyric, why don't you come back on when your book comes out? That'd be terrific.
I would love that. Yeah, thanks.
Hit me up next spring. We'll have a terrific conversation and hear all about it.
Sounds
and
great.
send me a copy too.
Yes, I will. For free, both of you.
Woohoo! All right, awesome.
No,
Thank you.
I believe in supporting artist writers. I'd like to purchase copies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barrett Klein. Thank you, Lyric Bartholomay. You guys were both great. Thank you, listeners, for being such wonderful, curious people. We'll see you next episode. If you enjoyed the show, please hit subscribe, leave a nice comment, spread the word, share it with someone, and write a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you're listening to podcasts. Support me on Patreon. Check out my Discord. We got a nice community going there. I would love to have more people involved on that. And if you don't know, Discord's just a way of building a community, like a better organized social media tool that is just other Here We Are listeners and like-minded people and no trolls. So it's awesome. And you get that with a Patreon, and you can also check out my show this Saturday, October 17th, as part of the Wisconsin Science Fest live Here We Are podcast. I sure hope to see you all there. Go to shanemauss.com and herewearepodcast.com. You guys are awesome. Those of you that listen all the way to the end, you are, of course, my favorite.